For those who have witnessed a wedding objection during the speak now or forever hold your peace portion, what happened? I was working at a wedding when I was younger. I was running the bar at the reception, which was very close to the hall the weddings were at. We were told that the reception would begin around 4 PM. It was already about 3ish and I was packing fridges, the usual barman things, while one of the male guests was still sitting there drinking. I asked if he was not joining the reception, to which he replied something along the lines of "when I have the courage." He downs his drink and leaves. 10 minutes later he's back, looking extremely disappointed. Guy orders a drink, and less than 30 seconds later another guy who's dressed extremely well, turned out to be the groom, walks in, punches him in the back of the head, and leaves. This dude just picked his drink up and sipped it further. I eventually found out that this dude had downed his drink, walked into the receptions down, admitted to sleeping with the wife on her hen night, and again the night before the wedding. He was never invited to the wedding. He just felt the groom needed to know, so he found out where the wedding was, suited up and dropped the info mid-ceremony. The groom deserved to know his bride-to-be was cheating on him, but it seems unnecessarily dramatic to tell him at the wedding of all times. This was in the early 70s in semi-rural Washington state. My cousin was getting married, and my aunt and the mother of the groom did not get along well. During the ceremony, when the pastor got to the part about objecting, my aunt said something to my uncle and the groom's mom jumped up and grabbed my aunt and they started going at it, all the way out the door and into the parking area. They were separated, and everyone filed back into the barn, where the wedding continued. The best part though was when another one of my cousins simply walked into the woods after the wedding because that's where he lived. Story is great, but I'm upvoting that last sentence. My aunt was getting married to her second husband, and during the speak now or forever hold your peace bit, their baby started crying. The dude officiating it said if anyone older than 6 months has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. He got a laugh and the wedding carried on. They're still together 10 years later, so I guess whatever my cousin had to say was misinformed. A lot of these stories hinge on an unflappable officiant who makes a witty quip and keeps rolling. I hope people not yet married reading this thread take away the importance of hiring the right person to officiate. I bet the laugh in that room was solid. The best man at my stepsister's wedding did this. It happened at the rehearsal the night before. It was a very large wedding and the rehearsal was bigger than a lot of weddings. The minister was going over the vows quickly while giving instruction on what to do. When he said something about objections, the best man interrupted saying he had to put a stop to this. He was in love with the bride and was sure she felt the same way. My sister and everyone else was horrified. It caused plenty of chaos and confusion. As far as I know, after that neither the bride nor groom ever spoke to him again. So worst man. To be fair, I didn't witness this, but it happened to my parents. My mom invited an ex she was still rather close with to her wedding and he stood up and yelled "I object." Little did everyone at the wedding know, my dad had gotten rather close with him and paid him to stand up and object just for the shoots and giggles, and he bursts out laughing. My mom didn't find it as funny and it really started their marriage off on the right foot. All fun and games until the bride responds by gasping, "Oh, insert ex's name. I never stopped loving you." It was a medieval themed wedding. The best man declared his love for the bride, challenged the groom to a fight for her love. They march outside, draw swords and go at it. Apparently they choreographed 2 nights a week for like 6 months, but it honestly looked like they were trying to kill each other. The groom wins and everything goes on like normal. 0 weird but cool. I attended a wedding as a guest of a family member, and when THR pastor said that, the doors busted open to the sanctuary and a man appeared and started to say "I do," but 2 huge ushers, one who was my date, quickly grabbed the guy before he could say anything but under the arms and literally lifted him up off the floor and carried him out. The wedding continued as normal. Turned out the guy was the ex of the bride. Strangest sight I ever saw. Sounds like they were forewarned that might happen. At my cousin's wedding, when the exchanging of vows took place, my aunt shouted, "Wasn't there supposed to be a part where you could object?" or something along those lines. "Aunt, I object." Minister, overruled. One of my friends interrupted his cousin's wedding to come out of the closet. He couldn't understand why people were so pissed at him. There's a time and place, and that place is definitely not a wedding and certainly not during the ceremony. When I was 13 we went to my second cousin's wedding. Everything is going great. They even got past the speak now or forever hold your peace part. They wrote their own vows, but before my second cousin's fiancé wife could even begin her vows, his son got up and announced to the entire room that she was cheating on his dad with her drug dealer and he couldn't let his dad marry her. My second cousin yelled at his son to either sit down or leave. The son left. My second cousin married her anyways, and 5 years and 1 baby later he finds out it was true and they separated, but were too tweaked out to be able to afford a divorce. Finally he got married a third time, but before he could get married his third now ex-wife had to pay for their divorce. This wedding had no objections. They moved to Missouri, and this time instead of separating or asking for a divorce he decided he didn't want to be married anymore and just moved back to Cali to get back together with his second ex-wife. Yet family dinners are a little awkward. How's the son doing? Groom's dad interrupted the wedding to ask the bride's father whether or not she was truly a virgin. Then he went on about how he didn't know anything of the wedding and blah blah blah. Truly weird and embarrassing. I was there with an ex-boyfriend. It is worse if father of the bride could actually answer that question accurately. Got booted out of my cousin's wedding reception with about 20 other people. My cousin had her wedding on a farm with a massive pig roast. From what I remember there was a massive amount of people. Anyway, her father and my other older cousin never really got along. At one point during the reception my older cousin had enough and absolutely lost it. He looked at a handful of us and asked if we had his back. Of course we all nodded, not really knowing what was about to happen. He disappeared and a few minutes later comes back with a 20-pound bag of pork meat from the leftover roast. He walks down to where my cousin's dad is. My aunt proceeds to yell, "Lonnie no," and smacks him right in the side of the face with the bag of meat. An all-out family brawl ensued. The whole family hasn't been invited to a wedding ever since. At my own wedding, but not in the traditional way. We were getting married along a river at the end of summer and tons of wakeboarders and boats were out. I was a ball of nerves and the ceremony felt so serious. When all of a sudden some dude bro on a boat blasting music screamed "Don't do it bro" and sped off. It was actually hilarious and made the rest of the ceremony a lot more fun. My husband and I cracked up even though his brothers looked like they were about to jump in the river after the guy on mobile. Sorry for formatting issues. Witnessed this a few months ago. Random guest stood up and proceeded to basically declare his love for the bride and pour his heart out, saying that it should been him up on the altar that day. Whole room went dead silent. Bride went red with embarrassment and groom went red with anger. Best man promptly called for DJ MC to start playing music. All this was in front of the random person's wife. Didn't go down too well. I once went to a wedding where both families were Irish. GF knew them but I didn't. At the ceremony, the groom's ex-wife started shouting crap and was gently directed outside. I couldn't hear what was said. The reception was amazing. Nice venue and all, but a bunch of guests had brought their own instruments and just started jamming what I can only describe as a genuine Irish jig. This went on for hours and remains a lasting memory of oral beauty. But I digress. There was a lot of booze. There was no responsible serving of alcohol and I'm certain it was by design. At some point I used the men's room and was curious if I'd just seen the groom in a stall, door open, with someone who was not the bride. I didn't know these people and it might have just been someone else, so said nothing. Some time later and the GF states, "Seriously, we should get going now." "Yeah sure." We grab our crap and head downstairs. I see the suspicious fellow again in the stairwell going to absolute town on this same lady. GF grabs my arm tightly and keeps walking past. Mumbles a thank you for the invite. I just smile and follow cause it's all weird. Yep, that was the groom. Octopusing his ex-wife. At his own wedding to another woman. The bride genuinely seemed a gem. The look that woman gave us as we passed was this smugly dominant "I always get what I want. Frick yeah, drunk as frick glare." Wow. They had some reasonable bubbly in a tub for people to take home and who would know or care if we hawked a few extras. I got it all explained to me after we were in a cab and well on our way home. I never got a follow up to that story, but 10/10 on the music. Would tag along to an Irish wedding again. Once the traditional music, that's what you referred to as a jig. still very popular in Ireland, starts playing, it will usually get a bit chaotic, I found. I was best man at a wedding and the groom's older sister decided to play a joke and stood up and said I object, then started giggling. Groom's mother stood up, slapped her, told her it was not an appropriate joke and told her to go home. This mother still refuses to talk to her daughter 4 years later. I'm guessing that mother-daughter relationship wasn't exactly rock solid to start with. I saw it nearly happen at my uncle's wedding. A friend of theirs got too drunk, and when they said speak now, he smiled, started to stand up. My mother grabbed him by his hair and sat him back down by force. Friend, this is my moment. Mother, no, it's definitely not. Went to a co-worker's wedding and the maid of honor objected and admitted to being the other woman and that the groom had been cheating with her for months. The bride left in tears and the groom immediately tried to get with the mom, but she told him she wasn't gonna hurt the bride further and that he needs to frick off. The bride is doing much better and is now a manager here, and I haven't heard from the groom in over a year. The mom and bride are on speaking terms, but I don't think their relationship is gonna ever be what it used to be. I don't know what's shittier, sleeping with her friend's fiance or waiting until the middle of a, presumably expensive, wedding to tell her, and, presumably, in front of a crowd of friends and family. It was at my wedding that we had at my grandmother's house, who lives out in the country next to a cattle farm. The cows didn't make a peep till that moment and one finally went moo. We all laughed and continued, but it was a funny moment about my wedding. I had cows mooing at my wedding too, except it was constantly, through the whole ceremony. I was at an Orthodox Jewish wedding with a chuppah ceremony where they read a contract and recite 7 blessings. The groom's dad pinched his son's derriere at a most solemn moment, caused him to loudly shriek into the silent audience of 400. Bride saw and snorted loudly. They also publicly kissed after the ceremony, which was a huge scandal. I don't understand that. If someone objected and get thrown out during the ceremony anyway, then why would they open the chance for them to object in the first place? Can't they just cut off that line and let the bride and groom kiss in peace? Not speak now part, but well, you'll see. Friend of mine was getting married in the park under the trees because both of them were nature people and groom had a dog that went everywhere with him that wasn't allowed in any church because dog, despite being well trained and quiet. There were some rows of chairs with lots of people filling them, including groom's mother who was sitting with his dog. Bride and groom were at the front with the officiant. Officiant begins. Officiant comes to the part where he says, "Do you take?" Groom's dog, Shadow, began to howl aloud. Long, mournful howl. Everyone laughed. Officiant started the question again. Loud, long, mournful howl again. Everyone laughed. Groom told Shadow to come to the front. Shadow ran up, stood directly in between the bride and groom, and the officiant started again. Not a peep from Shadow. Her vows. His vows. Officiant looked at Shadow and asked, "Shadow, do you take bride and groom to be your lawfully wedded parents?" Shadow barked one single bark. Officiant concluded the ceremony. Everyone cheered and clapped, and Shadow barked 3 times. The only times that he made any sounds. Not kidding. Beautiful dog too. A wedding I was at, one guy got up and pledged his undying love for the bride, followed by 4 or 5 others objecting for various reasons, including one guy's love for the groom. By the second or third objection, though, it was clear that the whole thing was a clever ruse. I found out later that it was all set up by the bride as a prank on the unsuspecting groom and family and friends. It was pretty hilarious. Should have had the guys fight over it for extra comedic effect. But yeah, 3 including the gay guy is enough. My boyfriend was friends with a guy who was getting a quickie marriage and needed witnesses. We agreed and went inside the little reception room, where the preacher, bride, and the groom were lined up, waiting on us. The preacher started his thing and I noticed a woman come in and lean against the back wall. She looked standing with her arms crossed. "Preacher, is there anyone here today who objects to the union of and? Please, speak now." The couple looked back at us and we both smiled. Suddenly, the bride's attention turned to the woman in the back of the room. "Bride, what the F is she doing here?" The woman quickly raises her hand, looking at the old preacher. "Woman, I object. I don't agree with this marriage." The bride glares at her. "Bride, shut up, B. Wait your freaking turn. It's my scheduled day. You're just mad you didn't think of it first. But the woman had to be dragged out of the room, kicking and screaming and spitting at the bride. After the reception, my BF's friend explained that he was originally in a relationship with the bride. After 10 years together, he started sleeping with her sister, the woman. They were close sisters until both ladies got pregnant by him. Simultaneously, they fought each other like cats and dogs for the next several years until the two cousins became school-aged and best friends. Neither one of the sisters would give up the man, and he wasn't sure which one he loved more, so he kept seeing both women. Last I heard they were all still together, but the two sisters had teamed up to take down his pregnant mistress. What the frick? My friend almost paid me to do it at my dad's marriage and I was so close to agreeing, but my dad overheard and stopped me. I would have done it for free if I knew how freaking crazy that stupid woman was back then. Here in the UK there's financial sanctions if the reason isn't good enough, i.e., doing it for a laugh. My friends knew me very well and warned me in advance. Nobody had said speak now, but the groom's ex still decided to get up and scream that he was her soulmate, that she forgave him for this whole thing, and that they should leave now because he'd proven his point by breaking up with her 5 years earlier, falling in love, and holding a wedding. I ate so much cake and got so drunk at that wedding. Meanwhile everyone else was screaming and throwing crap. Good times. The bride was my boyfriend's ex. No idea why they invited us. Either your boyfriend or the groom's ex were invited because the other was a don't ask your ex to the wedding or I'll be inviting mine too kind of move. A friend of the couple's in cosplay armor, think Master Chief, ran in, asked the date, said then I'm not too late, pointed a big, fake spacey rifle at the bride and said mother of the Xenocide, the fruit of thy womb will never destroy my planet. Die. Not her name. And the groom went her name is, her name. Seriously? Seriously? This is, date? Yes. Comma time? Yes. Comma almost right location? Oh, no. You want, other, very similar location. One so commonly confused the invitations had mentioned it. Oh, my bad. Have a nice day. Theater majors. Man. I do not even. That's funny but I cringed. Not at a wedding but at a funeral. A young man, mid-20s, had passed away rather suddenly in some sort of accident. His wife of a year or so and their respective families and friends are all in attendance as they are getting ready to lower him into the ground. The pastor dude asks if anyone would like to say anything further and another woman in her early 30s stood up. She began to tell everyone in attendance about how much pain she was in over the loss of the love of her life and that the two of them were meant going to be together and now they can't. Yup, the poor wife had to find out about the cheating at the funeral. Whoa, that woman sounds absolutely heinous. Like the dead guy is a dickhead too. But to do that at his funeral, to his family. 2. I have one of these. My friend, groom, was getting married to this awful girl we all hated. They broke up during the rehearsal dinner after arguing about the order the groomsmen would stand in. She wanted her brother higher in the order. Wedding still happened the next day, even though they were broken up. We all show up to the church not knowing if the bride would show, or what the frick would happen. She shows up. Pastor asks for the objections and her mom objects. Yells something about how the groom is a piece of crap and isn't welcome in her family. Mom leaves the church. Dad and brother leave after her. Bride is just standing there staring at the groom with a real smug look on her face and says, "Told you you should have put my brother second in line instead of fifth." Pastor doesn't know what to do, but just kinda keeps on trucking and eventually they're married. Drank a crap ton at the reception. We all did. Also they're divorced now. Didn't even make it a whole year. My wife drugged me to a wedding that I did not want to be at years ago, but I'm forever grateful that she did because I was able to witness one of the greatest spectacles of human drama that has ever taken place. This was like an episode of Jerry Springer mixed with Cops. Bride's lover spoke up at that moment and yelled, "I'll be goddamned if I'm gonna keep my mouth shut and let you steal my woman. You sorry piece of crap." This deranged old redneck proceeds to come at the groom with a pistol, threatening to shoot him if he doesn't give her up. It wasn't a huge wedding. Maybe 40 or so people, but every single one of them went screaming and running and maybe 2 people stayed and called the cops. I grabbed my wife's hand and we retreated outside to watch the rest of the scene unfold from the church window. I went to a wedding when I was 5. It was between my older brother and his fiancée. Anyways, they said the whole speak now spiel and right before he was done little 5-year-old me said I object and everyone turned to me. I was dead silent because I didn't know what would happen. My dad asked me, well, why do you object, and I said I did not know what would happen if I did, and I was promptly seated. My cousin was big into bodybuilding when he was younger and has always been really tall. Around the time he got married he was probably 6 feet 6 inches 260 pounds. I was 18 at the time and I'll never forget. When the priest asked are there any objections to this union, my cousin turned to the crowd and opened his arms wide and gestured as if daring someone to object. The whole place erupted in laughter. It was amazing. I can't imagine him with sleeves, just ripped shoulders and cuffs at his wrists. I was at an outdoor ceremony once, with a storm coming in. The pastor was trying to move things along so that we wouldn't get caught in the rain. The reception was indoors. He asked if anyone knows of any objection, and instantly, there was a loud clap of thunder. To his credit, the pastor just paused a moment and then said, "Anyone else? Alright, in that case," and finished the ceremony. I was house training my puppy and for a day or two he tried peeing on the deck as soon as he left the door. The third time I caught him and hollered no and then boom, massive thunderclap. Puppy leapt off the deck, peed on the grass and has never peed the deck again. My dad insisted on having this in his and my mom's wedding because he wanted it to mean speak now or forever hold your peace, meaning my mom was his piece of butt. Almost 40 years later, they're still married. Side note, when he walked me down the aisle at my first wedding, he let me know I could still say no even 2 steps from Pachelbel's canon in E. I said nope and giggled. Silly me. We were divorced 6 years later. This happened very recently, but in a different manner than the other comments I'm seeing. For years, groom and best man are super close, room together, and the running joke is that they're more than friends. Later on, groom meets bride, falls in love, and proposes. New running joke is that best man is very disappointed that groom is marrying someone else. At the wedding, officiant asks if anyone has objections. Best man objects. Officiant quickly overrules the objection. It was planned, and bride thought it was a funny way to acknowledge the super close friendship between groom and best man. Did not result in anyone being kicked out or awkwardness. Fun and surprisingly appropriate. I was expecting this to end with the running joke turning out to be true and the groom and best man living happily ever after, lol. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.